A woman is milking a cow when she falls asleep. Not faints, sleeps. Sitting upright on the stool, hands still on the pail, gone. She will not wake for 2 days. This is Kalachi, a speck of a village on the Kazakh steppe. Starting in 2013, its people began dropping into a sleep that lasted days, sometimes weeks. Children at their desks, men mid-stride in the road. Doctors ran every test they had and found nothing wrong. The world started calling it Sleepy Hollow. And every word of what you're about to hear is documented, investigated on the record. To understand Kalachi, you have to look at what sits beside it. Just over the rise stands Krasnogorsk, a dead Soviet town built to mine one thing: uranium. When the Soviet Union fell, the mines closed in the early 90s. The workers left. The pumps that kept the tunnels dry were switched off, and the town slowly emptied to almost nothing. But Kalachi stayed. About 600 people, farmers, pensioners, schoolchildren, living a quiet, ordinary life in the shadow of the dead town. Nobody thought twice about the tunnels underground. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where the school is the heart of the village, where the biggest event of the year is the harvest. Nothing happens here. That was the point. And then, in March of 2013, a man sat down at his own kitchen table and didn't get up. He slept for days. When he woke, he couldn't remember sitting down at all. At first, they thought it was just him. One strange day, one tired man. They were wrong. Then it spread. A child collapsed at her school desk, pencil still in her hand. A woman folded mid-conversation. People dropped while walking and woke on the ground with no idea how they got there. It came with no warning, no fever, no pain, no fall, just a switch flipping off, mid-sentence, mid-task, mid-step, one moment present, the next simply not there. And waking was its own kind of nightmare. People surfaced with their memory wiped clean, and worse, they saw things, hallucinations of monsters, of flying horses, of children that weren't there. They woke nauseous, dizzy, slurring their words like drunks who'd never touched a drink. Some couldn't stand, some couldn't say their own names. The doctors had never seen anything like it. So they tested blood, spinal fluid, brain scans. They checked for infection, for poison, for stroke, for everything a textbook could name. Every result came back normal. Think about what that means. A person sleeps for a week, hallucinates on waking, forgets days of their life, and science looks inside them and finds a perfectly healthy human being. And it kept coming back. The same people, struck again and again. Whatever this was, it wasn't finished with Kalachi. It was settling in. By the time it ran its course, around 150 people had been put to sleep, a quarter of the village. And nobody could tell them why. This was no longer a village rumor. Kazakh authorities, the Russian Academy of Sciences, and scientists from Tomsk Polytechnic descended on Kalachi. They would spend years on it. They tested the water, the soil, the houses. They swept for radiation, the obvious fear, with a uranium town next door. And on that front, the readings stayed stubbornly, almost disappointingly low. So if it wasn't radiation poisoning, and it wasn't a virus, and it wasn't in the blood, then what was reaching into healthy bodies and switching them off? The investigators kept circling one thing they couldn't see. The air itself. Inside the homes, instruments began to find it, the oxygen running low, and other gases creeping in to take its place. The danger wasn't in the ground, it was in the rooms where people slept. And the trail led down. Down past the foundations, past the soil, into the old tunnels of the dead mine, now flooded to the brim with rising groundwater. The investigators turned their attention underground. Down there, the picture sharpened. When the mine drowned, the timber holding up those tunnels, beams cut decades ago, sat rotting underwater, and rotting wood, starved of air, gives off carbon monoxide. The water kept rising in the tunnels, and as it rose, it pushed the trapped gas ahead of it, up through the rock, up through the earth, up toward the surface, up toward the village, toward the bedrooms. Carbon monoxide is invisible. It has no smell, and it binds to your blood roughly 200 times more tightly than oxygen does, quietly starving the brain until the brain does the only thing it can. it shuts down. It sleeps. In 2015, Kazakh officials went public with the leading answer. The flooded uranium mine, they said, was generating carbon monoxide and other hydrocarbons, and the gas was seeping into the village, displacing the oxygen people needed to stay awake. There was more. A geochemist from Tomsk, Leonid Rikvanov, flagged elevated radon as well, another heavy, invisible gas rising out of the same uranium ground, adding to the load in the air. It was, at last, an explanation that fit. A dead mine, drowning in its own water, breathing poison up through the floorboards while a village slept above it. The invisible enemy finally had a face. And so the authorities made the only safe choice left. They decided to empty Kalachi entirely. Families were offered new homes elsewhere, and one by one, they took them. The school went quiet. The cottages went dark. The village that couldn't stay awake was, in the end, put to sleep for good, relocated, abandoned, left to the steppe and the gas seeping up beneath it. So the prosaic answer is real, and it deserves its due. Gas from a flooded mine, oxygen quietly pushed aside, a whole village dosed in its sleep. It fits the geology, it fits the chemistry. For most scientists, that is the end of the story. And yet, the residents themselves raised a quiet objection that never fully went away. The mine had been dead since the early 90s, and carbon monoxide usually comes from burning, from combustion, not from still water in a cold, dark hole. There were the loose ends, too. Why did it start in 2013, 20 years after the pump stopped? Why those houses and not others? Why the hallucinations, the flying horses, the monsters in the corner? Gas can starve a brain. The exact mechanism here was never nailed down to everyone's satisfaction. That is the small, stubborn gap. Not a conspiracy, not a cover-up, just a piece of an explanation that the experts themselves could never quite seal shut. And an unsealed door in a place like Kalachi is enough to keep you awake. Kalachi is empty now. The people are gone, the houses are dark, and the mine is still down there in the dark, still flooded, still, by every measurement we have, quietly breathing. We moved the village. We never did stop the breath.